Today we're discussing Laurie Halse Anderson's Speak all the way to the end of the book. So please read all the way to the end of the book before proceeding. All literature is political. Yes, including children's literature, including that subset of children's literature that we refer to as young adult literature or literature for adolescents. What literature chooses to talk about, what it chooses to omit, how it tells its story, which perspectives get represented and valued, which perspectives get ignored or dismissed. Art cannot avoid politics. Or to put this another way, the attempt to avoid politics is itself a political act. So, all literature is political, including children's literature, literature for adolescents. But literature for adolescents is much more likely to be explicitly political. Though we're only at the third novel of the semester, you have doubtless noticed this already. My two questions for you today reflect that. And these questions are for everyone. I'm not splitting you into groups, so stay exactly where you are. First question. Speak is a realist novel. So is its reputable History of Frankie Landau Banks, and for that matter, so is The Catcher in the Rye. Realism, as a literary genre, focuses on the ordinary details of everyday life. A fancy word for that is the quotidian. And it often acknowledges that the experiences of ordinary people are worth our attention. So, for example, you don't need to be a king or famous or on television to be worthy of a novel. Social realism is a kind of realism that has political goals. So not just reflecting everyday life, but actually suggesting that society needs to be changed. So imagine, if you will, that both The Secret History of Frankie Landau Banks and Speak are social realism. That is, that they are trying to make a political argument that gets the reader thinking. Incidentally, I'm not sure whether Laurie Halse Anderson or E. Lockhart thinks of themselves as writing social realism. I am suggesting that these books have elements of social realism in them, and that if we think of them as social realism, we will focus on those elements. And that is why in this question I have been foregrounding genre, realism, social realism. What genre does is it calls our attention to particular aspects of the form. And I want to call your attention to this particular aspect of the form of these books. Questions. What would you say the central political arguments of each book are? And I realize it's not fair to reduce a book to a political argument. So Laurie Halse Anderson, E. Lockhart, if you happen upon this video, please forgive me for reducing your book to a political argument or suggesting that my students do that. But it does help us hone in on the politics, and that's why I asked the question. So, what would you say the central arguments of each book are? And as always, go to the book, find the quotations that support that particular claim, because we could make, obviously, more than one claim about such a question. We can answer that question more than one way. And in as much as each novel is making an argument, which novel would you say is more effective in making that argument? Another way to frame the second half of this question is, which novel would be more likely to inspire the reader to take action? Question number 2. I don't know if you have ever gone to the American Library Association's website and looked at their lists of challenged or banned books. But if you have, you'll notice there are a number of books that are assigned to younger readers, especially to adolescents, on those lists. And just to be clear, the American Library Association keeps track of books that are challenged or banned, not because they believe that books should be challenged or banned. They keep track of them because they oppose that, they want to call attention to that, and they want to defend people's right to read. So my question then is this. Is this novel appropriate for its age group. Melinda is in 9th grade. Would you teach this novel to 9th graders? Why or why not? And I ask that question because this book does get challenged from time to time. It is in fact number 60 on the list of top banned and challenged books for the decade 2000 to 2009. And I am tempted to read a challenge made to the book in 2010 by Wesley Scroggins, who was then an associate professor of management at Missouri State University. He called the book, quote, soft pornography, end quote. And he offered the following analysis. Quote, this is a book about a very dysfunctional family. School teachers are losers, adults are losers, and the cheerleading squad scores more than the football team. They have sex on Saturday night, and there are goddesses at church on Sunday morning. The cheer squad also gets their group rape abortions at prom time. The main character in the book is alone with a boy who is touching her female parts. Keep in mind, all of this is a quote from Wesley Scroggins. She makes the statement that this is what high school is supposed to feel like. The boy then rapes her on the next page. Actually, the book and movie both contain 2 rape scenes. End quote. Now, I haven't seen the movie, so I can't talk about the movie. But is the book soft pornography? What do you make of Professor Scroggins' analysis? The larger question here is, how would you respond if a parent or a community member criticized your decision to teach this book at the 9th grade level or the 10th grade level? What would you say? And there's a range of possible responses. You could agree, whether you agree with the quotation I gave you from Wesley Scroggins or not. You might agree. You might also disagree. And you might fall somewhere in between. There's more than one response to this question. But whatever response you make, please defend it with examples from the book. So if you're arguing that the book is not something you would teach to 9th graders, point to something in the book. Quote it. Indicate why you think that. If, on the other hand, you think it is something that would be appropriate to read with a 9th grade class, again, point to some examples. And if you want a particular argument to either embrace or refute, I have given you one, so you can use that one. And I am posing this question because whether Speak is a book you would teach or not, whether Speak is a book you would defend or not. Since many of you are in this class because you're secondary education majors and plan to be teachers, you need to know how to teach a book that may be challenged. So here are some guidelines on how to preserve intellectual freedom in your classroom. Why are you using the book in the class in the first place? Is the book appropriate for its age level? And this is a critique that often comes up when people want to remove a book. They say, well, it's not appropriate for age level. So is Speak appropriate for age level? 9th grade, let's say. Does the book meet the objectives for your class? What are those objectives? How does it meet those objectives? What do you want your students to learn from the book? Incidentally, you can answer this question for any of the books that we read in this class. Class discussion will give you answers for these questions. Class discussion and the questions that I ask will help you think about literary merit, the themes of the work, the politics of the work, how it is telling a story. Essentially, all the tools of literary analysis that you have help you talk about a book, how it works, why you find value in it, and why it's something that should be part of your curriculum. Does the book appear on recommended lists? What has been the critical response to this book? Has the book, has its author won awards? We can answer that question pretty clearly right here. It was a Prince Honor Book for excellence in young readers' literature. It's actually become something of a classic in books for young readers. It's widely taught. It's very well regarded. Think about what kind of objections might be raised in the book. Language, tone, theme, subject matter. And how could you best address those objections? That's really important. You can anticipate a possible critique. You therefore can respond to that critique. And as a last resort, are there alternative readings that you could offer in place of this particular book. That's another way around it. Offer an alternative. I should also say here that public schools and private schools have guidelines. You should familiarize yourself with your school's guidelines. There's often a complaint form. There's a clearly designated procedure for dealing with complaints. Typically, there's a committee that hears these. The school itself likely has a philosophical statement of its own aims. That's the kind of statement you'd probably want to incorporate into your aims as a teacher. If your aims align very closely with the school's aims, that's a pretty great defense. And of course, get the support of the school administration, other teachers, and do that before you teach the book in the first place. Also, support other teachers when they encounter challenges to their curriculum. Educate your community about the importance of intellectual freedom. The American Library Association's website has lots and lots of resources. I hope in telling you all this, I'm not making you paranoid. I hope I'm not scaring you. You shouldn't be scared. You should be prepared. And so that's what I'm hoping to do, is to prepare you so that should it come up, you'll know what to do and you'll be fine. Well, those are my questions about Speak. Don't forget that you have a journal due, as always, at the same time on Sunday night, and the quiz, which is due, as always, at the same time on Monday, although it's available as of Friday. In our next class, we will be looking at the fairy tale Cinderella and at a book that offers a different perspective on Cinderella, Melinda Lowe's Ash. As you read, you might think about how Ash is responding to earlier versions of the story, what it's retaining, what it's leaving behind, and what it's changing. As a side note, I'm really looking forward to teaching Ash because I have not taught it before, and I like to teach new books. It's not a brand new book. It's close to a decade old, but it's new to me. And I mention that to those of you who are planning to teach because you should teach new books. You should keep changing what you teach as much as you can because great new work continues to be published, and teaching new books keeps you fresh, keeps you engaged, keeps you excited. That's enough pontificating for me. I will see you next time for Cinderella and Melinda Lowe's Ash. Talk to you then. Bye.